Hello YouTube, welcome back to Kind Heart Homestead. My name is Ben and I'm here on our off-grid property in the mountains of Virginia. Behind me you can see our 40-foot fifth wheel camper as well as our solar shed. If you recall my progress from previous episodes in the series, you'll know that I'm working on the drywall as well as a bunch of other stuff in parallel. So who knows what I'm going to get done on this trip. I'm waiting on several Amazon orders to show up before I can start some of the projects, but what I can do is continue on with the drywall. My priority is getting the bathroom ready, because once we prime the bathroom, I can go ahead and put the shower and the toilet in, and then we can start using the space. So I don't know if this is a logical way to do it, but what I'm hoping to do is make this room functional and then move the progress into the rest of the room. I'm doing some mudding in there as I have time, just using up the mud that I have left in my little cup and on my trowels before I clean up. But I do want to prioritize in here, like I said. So let's see what I can get done. I might not be able to show all of the footage from drywalling because it is kind of a cramped space in there. But I hope you stick around and enjoy this episode. Thanks. I'm actually at the very bottom of this bucket of drywall compound. Most of this has gone into the bathroom joints, but some of it is in these living room edges as well. I mentioned before that I like to keep the drywall mud pretty thick to fill holes, but now that all the holes and the tape has been sufficiently covered, I do want to water this down a bit because I'm feathering out the drywall compound. That means that anywhere that I've put mud in a very thick spread, I want the edges to gradually taper almost to nothing to the rest of the drywall. That way, after it's painted, you won't really see the lumps that cover the seams and the tape. What you're going to see is a very gradual slope, so gradual that you shouldn't actually be able to notice where the tape was and where the joints were. Now that this mud is watered down and sufficiently mixed, it's time to throw some of it into my little trowel bucket here, test it out, spread it around a bit, and start to get it on the walls. Let's see how it works out. Actually, before I test out the consistency of this drywall mud, I need to do a quick pass of sanding on the existing drywall compound. Then I need to dust off the walls so that the new compound can stick without issue. I picked up this little sanding sponge from the drywall section at Lowe's, and it seems to be actually like a sanding sponge. It's like a squishy block with abrasive paper on every side. So some sort of sandpaper, a pretty fine grit. I'm not trying to remove much material. I'm just trying to essentially deburr it and smooth it enough so I have something smooth to feather into with my trowel. I ended up picking up a 8-inch trowel. I guess you could call it a drywall knife. I'm giving it a try here, but I'm actually not very good with this trowel. I don't know if it's because it's low quality or if it's because I'm so used to the 6-inch one. But you can see I'm reverting back to the 6-inch blade. You'll notice that each of these passes, the white compound stripe you see going up and across the walls, is getting bigger and bigger. The general strategy is to use a bigger knife each time. At least that's how the professionals do it. But you'll notice me tending to revert back to the 6-inch knife because that's what I'm most comfortable with. Even if the blade isn't wider, I can still feather it in by placing the mud farther from the actual corner or joint and then just kind of spreading it down in the new section instead of across the old section and the new section at the same time. It does take a bit more work and more passes, but it's a small room and it doesn't really make that big of a difference in the scheme of things. You'll notice that I'm laying the mud on really thick, but then I'm removing most of it again. That just seems to be the easiest way for me to make sure everything is feathered appropriately. So that's my mud pass for this trip. Here's what it looks like as it's drying. The new mud that I've added is a bit darker than the dried white material. I do plan to do a couple more passes of sanding and mudding before calling this project complete. Since I'm between coats on the bathroom drywall mud, I'm going to work over here around the utility room. I have this big pressure tank here. Excuse the clutter. I'm in the middle of a bunch of different tasks in here. But I need to elevate that pressure tank because there's going to be a dryer vent going along near the floor that will eventually come out of the building right there near the ground. I honestly don't need to raise it too much. I was thinking about just raising it maybe a foot or so. So I basically need to frame out a box, put a piece of zip sheathing on top of it. I have all my supplies here, have some scraps of pressure treated boards that'll be good for coming in contact with the concrete. I have some warped framing boards that I rejected from the walls. And this doesn't need to be anything too impressive. So I'm going to go ahead and try to build this as quick as I can. To start out this project, I'm assessing the lengths of my materials. You can see I have a few short 2x4s, a couple scraps of pressure treated, and then one full-length stud. But I also have these zip sheathing scraps left over. These are the triangular remnants from when I was cutting the gable end walls. I'm trying to use up anything I can at this point because anything that's left over, I'm probably going to have to take to some sort of trash center or burn it. So when I measured the diameter of the base of the pressure tank, I decided to build a platform with the same width. I didn't want any of that stand to overhang because this is going to be a pretty heavy tank once it gets filled with water. So I'm using my short sheathing nails with my nail gun to attach the zip sheathing scrap to this wooden square that I built out of 2x4s. It is a square, not a rectangle. And then I'm simply attaching 4 equal length legs to it. And that should be plenty strong, but I think I want to have some sort of bracing in there to prevent the legs from spreading apart and collapsing. I doubt that would happen, but because I tend to move things around from time to time and I'm still in construction, I might need to slide this little table out of the way. So to keep the legs aligned, I'm putting these cross braces in place. Eventually, maybe I'll add some sort of diagonal brace, but for now, while everything is freshly built and strong, I think this is the perfect design. Let's see how it works. One of the unintentional benefits of this platform was to raise the plumbing at the bottom of this pressure tank up to a more manageable level for me to get a wrench in there and a pair of channel lock pliers so I can tighten these fittings. I'm glad I didn't really do this before because just squatting down here, it is pretty easy to access it. You can see I'm putting Teflon tape around all the threads and then I'm screwing the fittings into place. This is a standard, I forgot what it's called, some sort of T-branch that comes out of a pressure tank. It has an input and an output. I don't think the sides really matter, but there's also a few other holes, one for a pressure relief valve, one for a hose bib, one for the pressure gauge, and then one for the electronic component that triggers the well. I'm using this very large poly line to connect to the well. I believe it's 1.25 inches. It might actually be an inch. But either way, to attach these barbed fittings, I really have to heat up the pipe. So that's what I'm doing here with the torch. Then I'm using hose clamps. You can see here pretty much the final design. The input side has that angle bracket that's going to go to my well connection, and then the right side is a PEX fitting. While I'm in my plumbing mode and I have my pipe wrenches out, it's time to pressure test the propane lines. I'm using this yellow PEX-like material underground to hold the gas, but these risers use standard 3/4 inch iron pipe threads. So I'm putting a cap on one end, my pressure gauge on the other end, and now I'm using my tire filling attachment on my air compressor to fill this up around 14 to 15 psi to check for leaks. Well, it's 32 degrees. I'm here on my last morning, and unfortunately, the delivery I was relying on to get the well running, I ordered the wrong breaker. I ordered Square D by Schneider, but it was the wrong product line. It was supposed to be the HOM series, and I got some other type of weird clip that doesn't fit in my breaker. It's a bit of an obscure breaker because it's a split phase 20 amp. The well pump only draws 13 amps, but I'm pretty sure 20 amp is the smallest split phase you can get, and I think that's the recommended one by the manufacturer. But I'm happy that I got the pressure tank in place up on that pedestal. That means I can start moving forward with some of the other things in that room. And also, I'm almost ready to purchase my ground mount system and get the solar finalized. So if you want to see that kind of stuff, go ahead and click that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time here on Kind Heart Homestead. Bye.